Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Let's go discover the Pantanal, Paradise for Birds, Part 2, presented by Nat Hab's Guide Development Director and Expedition Leader, Annie Van Dinther, and Expedition Leader, Fred Tavares. It is a pleasure to have you both with us today. Annie, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you so much, Kendall, and thanks for all the hard work that you put into making sure that these can happen because they are so much fun. Thanks to all of you for showing up. We cannot wait to talk with you about the birds of the Pantanal again. This is the second of a little series we have here. And as Kendall said, I'm Annie. I'm the Guide Development Director and Expedition Leader. I am coming to you from Alaska, and I am so excited that I get to learn from my friend Fred, who is coming from a very different part of the world. Fred, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, hi Annie, hi everybody. Thanks for showing up. Well, my name is Fred Tavares. I was born in the state of Rio. I'm a naturalist guide, and now I'm based in Southeast Brazil. And today we'll talk about one of my favorite places on earth, the Pantanal.
I am so excited for us to learn about these birds together. I wasn't able to be in part one, and I'm really grateful to Kobe for stepping in for me. So let's go. Let's learn about these birds.
Okay, so first, just to show you where the Pantanal is, just to give you a more specific location. We are in South America here. The Pantanal is represented by the bright green area in the map, kind of yellowish. So Pantanal, most part of it is situated in Brazil, and also a small part is in Bolivia and Paraguay. Just for you to have a better reference, Pantanal is between 16 and 22 south and 55 and 58 west. So we are right in the center of South America.
Okay, and there's different ecosystems, right? So it's not just one ecosystem in this large area. Tell us about these different ecosystems.
Well, Pantanal, it's a big mosaic. It's composed by several different biomes. It has a strong influence from the Brazilian savanna, a strong influence from the Atlantic rainforest, and also influence from the Amazon forest. So basically there you can find species of plants and animals from all the habitats. So it is this big mosaic that brings this big variety of species to the Pantanal. So just for you to have an idea, on the top left, with the most common landscape of the Pantanal, it's like an open savanna with some woodland on it, with some forest patch in the middle of it. On the right, the famous wetlands of the Pantanal. Top left, bottom left, it's a typical gallery forest from the Pantanal, and bottom right, it's a semi-deciduous forest with these beautiful yellow trees that we can see in the Pantanal. We call them as the candle trees.
All right, and this bird is so beautiful.
So this bird, I have to tell you something. I have to be very honest. I showed this bird. It was the last bird shown on the part one, but as this is one of my favorite birds of the Pantanal, I used refreshment as an excuse to put this bird again. This is world's largest macaw. It's called the Hyacinth Macaw, and this is one of the birds we have very, very good chance to see in the Pantanal. We always work hard to find them for you.
I have a question about that bird before we go on. It's really more a question about birds in general and birds that you love. I am wondering if you have a bird that is like a call that you hear and you're like, ah, all is well with the world. I am hearing this call again. Like, is there a bird that feels like home when you hear it, or a different season or something like that?
Wow, I think that's the bird, Hyacinth Macaws. They always make my day, put a big smile on my face. The call itself is not a very special call, you know, it's just like a big parrot screaming, but it brings a lot to me. It's the time of the day they like to start vocalizing, and I think that's my special vocal bird of the Pantanal. It brings lots of good memories, always bring a smile to me. That's the one.
I wonder how many of our guests viewing have a bird like that, a call that they hear and they know it marks a season, or it just reminds them of something special in their life. For me, it's the golden crowned sparrow or the sandhill cranes. Either one of those, you know, hearing their call is just, there's, you know, it's spring, you know, it's summer, and it feels like all is well with the world. So I can't wait till I can hear this macaw someday and know what that sound is for you.
Yeah, that's very special. So let's talk about other birds, some different species. So Pantanal has lots of wetlands. Pantanal, it means pantano, which means wetland. So parts of it are flooded, seasonally flooded, and it brings some special birds for us. And it's amazing the variety of birds that you can see in the same habitat. This is a very special bird. It's called the southern screamer. It calls the screamer as they have a very, very powerful call. If you visit the Pantanal, definitely that's going to be one of the calls we're going to hear that. This bird's about 35 inch tall, which is pretty big. Yes. And it has about 8 pounds of weight, so it's a pretty big bird and has this prehistorical looking. And
very fuzzy on the bird.
Yes. And despite of its size, it has a very elegant flight. It has a pretty long wingspan, and when you're lucky to see this bird in flight, if you note on the wing there is like a big spur growing from the wing. This is exactly where the bird bends the wing, and this spur is used for the bird to protect itself and protect its family, of course. This bird likes to nest on short bushes. They make a nest basically made of leaves, and they just sit there, and any predator, anyone comes out, they show this spur. It's very important for them.
Use your mouse to go over where the spur is. Just if you move your pointer to it, the guests will see that as well.
That's here.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's pretty big. It's pretty big. And with the wings closed, you won't see it. Only when it's flying or when they open the wings, that's the only opportunity to see the spur. Yes, absolutely. Okay, another habitant from the marsh. It's funny because whenever you have to choose birds, I forgot to tell you that Pantanal has about 650 different bird species. So imagine how hard it was to choose some of the birds. Some of them I chose because of their behavior, some of them because they are rare, or some of them just because they're beautiful. That's the case of this one. That's called the scarlet-headed blackbird. This is a bird that we have some special place to stop and look for it, and definitely worth spending some time trying to find this beauty of the Pantanal.
So gorgeous.
It is, yes. And in the same habitat, you can find a black and white bird. It's not all about colors. Black and white is always in fashion as well. And this bird is less than half of the size of the previous bird. So this is about the size of a wren, maybe a little bit bigger. And this is called the white-headed marsh tyrant. So this is a flycatcher type thing. And it's a bird that we see quite often in the Pantanal, a very, very special one as well.
Why is this bird called a tyrant? Does it behave in a way to earn this name?
It belongs to a family called Tyrannid.
Okay.
So all flycatchers, they belong to a family called Tyrannid. And the reason this family is called Tyrannid, because several of the members of this family, they do have crests, and they use this crest as a territorial display, or sometimes even during the mating season as a sexual display. It can be. So Tyrannid is amazing because of the territorial display, because they can get quite aggressive showing their crown. So I believe this is the reason it comes from Tyrannid, tyrants. So now let's talk about forests. If you look in some books, you're gonna find some people, they consider that there is just one kind of forest in the Pantanal, and some people will consider that there are like 2 different kinds of forests in the Pantanal. I would prefer to consider 2 different types. The first one is the gallery forest, the big forest growing along riversides. And the other one is the this forest, the gallery forest. They are mainly green all over the year. And you have the semi-deciduous forests that they grow far from the rivers. And you can see well in this picture here, the different texture. It's all forest and a very plain texture. This is like grassland. The forest areas, they never get flooded because they grow in a terrain which is about 3, 4, 5 feet above the rest of the terrain of the Pantanal, and the rest of the area is the area that we're going to get flooded. So forests, they are extremely important for several mammals and birds, as they need a refuge during the flood, a dry area during the flooding season. And very important, but the forests of the Pantanal, they only cover like 8% of the total area of the Pantanal, but they're extremely important.
This bird looks fantastic.
Yes, this is called the Plush Crested J. It's one of the J species we have in the Pantanal. This one is more common to see in the southern Pantanal, which we also visited in our tour. And this bird is very interesting. Like other jays, they can be noisy. And whenever we see jays that they are too excited in the forest, we always look for something else, because generally they are the first birds to give an alarm call to all the other species that a big predator or any kind of predators are coming. So this is an important sign for us whenever we're looking.
Bay of Canada is called a camp robber or the trapper's best friend, because they keep company during the long times. It seems like this one would be the naturalist's best friend to let you know when there's something you should be looking for.
Well, you know, it can be our best friend, but sometimes not our best friend. Sometimes we're trying to get close to something, and like to a monkey, and we don't want to be seen by this monkey, and there is the jay, chow, 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 warning us. But most of the time, they're very friendly. Help us.
So they're the alarm call for the Pantanal.
Yes, absolutely. One of the alarm calls. So this is one of the probably most emblematic birds of the tropics. This one is called the blue-crowned trugon. Trugons, they occur mainly in the tropics, especially from Central America going down to South America. This species is restricted to the Pantanal and some areas in the surrounds. So it's a very special species. This is a fruit-eating bird. They like to make their nests on tree holes.
I feel like people should study this bird, or artists. Like, they have all the makings of incredible fashion or art, right? The color wheel, design patterns, it's all there.
Yeah, the stripes on the tail, the eye ring, everything. Makes a very special bird.
Yeah.
And like many other birds of the tropics, the colors can be very strong. And interesting about this bird, all year round, it keeps the colors like this. During the mating season, can be a little bit brighter, but basically it's like that.
Wow.
And here's a close-up view of this beauty. Okay, let's check what we have next here. This is one of my favorite birds of the Pantanal. This is called the Helmeted Mannequin. It has this very interesting Mohican. This is a male bird. The female is pretty much the same, but all olive green, does not have this bright red crest and not the black body. And very interesting, I don't know if you heard about mannequins. Mannequins, they are famous for their dance when males are displaying for the females. This is one of the few species that does not dance, but it has a very interesting call to attract the females. So that's the helmeted mannequin, and this one, it's a typical forest species.
And with
very
that
typical forest species.
Hairdo, you don't need the big dance. You just have the punk rock hairdo, and you're all set.
That's it, absolutely. Okay, this bird here is called the rufous-tailed jacamar. It reminds a hummingbird somehow, but it's not a hummingbird. In the evolution scale, something between kingfishers and hummingbirds. And it occupies the same niche of the bee eaters that occurs in Africa, some species in Asia. So it occupies the same niche, catching insects in flight. They can fly very, very fast to catch insects, and generally they fly back to the same perch. And very interesting, I think this is something about the species, that they are very relaxed, and most of the time they let you get very, very close to them, close looks to them. Like this picture was taken with a 300 millimeters lens, so just for you to have an idea.
Wow. And that they're so relaxed, is there not a predator, or why do you think they're so comfortable with humans?
Annie, this is a very good question. I think first thing, I think it's something related with the species, because this species occurs in different areas, and every area where you can find this bird, generally it is a relaxed species. But apart from that, animals in the Pantanal, that includes birds as well, they let you to take a good approach to them in the Pantanal. I'm not sure if they are used to people. They've been raising cattle in the Pantanal for like 200 years. So humans, they are in the Pantanal for at least 200 years, probably more than that. And they never really bother the animals. Pantanal is well preserved, even with this cattle raising activity. So I think some of the species, they just got really used to people, including birds, which is quite unusual. So.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, let's check here another forest habitat. This is a wood creeper. We have in Brazil, not in Brazil, but in tropic areas, we have wood creepers and we have woodpeckers. So this is a wood creeper. Main difference, they have a similar behavior, but the main difference between wood creepers and woodpeckers is that wood creepers, generally they are brown. They are going to have different shades of brown, but they don't have different colors from that. Generally they are solitary birds, while woodpeckers, generally they are in pairs, depend on the species, in small flocks. Wood creepers, they do not drum to mark their territory like woodpeckers do. And another thing you can see well on this picture here is the position of the toes. Wood creepers, they have 3 toes pointing to the front, 3 toes pointing forward and 1 pointing back, while woodpeckers, they have 2 toes and 2 toes, 2 forward and 2 backwards. But woodpeckers, they can invert one of the toes and use 3 and 1 like the wood creepers. So these are the main difference. This species here is called the red-billed thief-bill, just like the two. It's a very good name for the bird. And like woodpeckers, they are looking for larvae, insects on the trees, and they do not peck like the woodpeckers. So generally they just dig. As they found a hole, they just dig looking for food.
It looks like a phenomenal tool, that beak.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. This is a really cool bird to see. This beak is quite impressive. And both species, woodpeckers and wood creepers, they use their tail as a support when they're climbing trees. And now let's talk about woodpeckers. It's hard to believe, but this is a woodpecker. It's called the white-wedged piculet. This is like a dwarf woodpecker. Just for you to have an idea, this species only have 3 inches of length. So it's quite unusual to have such a small woodpecker, isn't it?
Wow.
Yeah, so this one occurs in the Pantanal, very, very special bird, and it drums like the bigger species, but it's a very soft drum. Whenever you hear the drum from this species, you know that's a woodpecker from this genus called Picuminus. So that's white-wedged piculet.
So this one's not a juvenile. This is not a baby. This is just...
No, it's a full-grown one.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty small one. Very special bird.
They're beautiful.
Yes, it is.
Ooh,
Not a good bird. Not a good woodpecker we have in the Pantanal. There are several different species of woodpeckers in the Pantanal, and this is called the pale crested woodpecker. Quite unusual to have these yellow heads. This is much bigger than the piculet, and this is a male with this red cheek. The female has the head is all yellow, and the crest is not so prominent like this one. Mm-hmm. And this is a bird that generally you used to see them well in our trips.
They look so dramatic with that helmet that's moving back like that. It's very dramatic.
What really impressed me on birds in some of the bird species is the color variation, the combination of colors.
Yeah.
Like just try to wear something, try to combine clothes wearing yellow, brown, red, and a little bit of blue. People are gonna think that you're crazy. Like
from the 70s.
Yes, but in nature it's just perfect, just fits wonderful. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it is.
So now we changed the habitat a little bit. Actually, not the habitat, we changed the time of the day.
Okay.
We're going to talk about some of the night birds of the Pantanal. In the Pantanal, we used to do some night drives looking for some night creatures, including some of the birds we can see here.
Wow.
And that's very interesting. This is a night bird, but was photographed in daylight, which is quite unusual, especially for this species here. It's called band-tailed nighthawk. Basically, they belong to a family that include nighthawks and nightjars. You have both species in North America. Not exactly this one, but nighthawks and nightjars. What makes it a nighthawk is the wing shape that reminds a hawk in flight. And this bird, specifically this species here, it's very special because when we are driving back to our lodge after searching for jaguars in our Pantanal tour, this is a bird that we see quite often, flying close to the boat, flying low near the water, looking for insects. So it's quite a spectacle to see them in flight, and sometimes we see 20, 30 of them flying together. It's quite impressive to see them.
But it's not a hawk. Like it's called a nighthawk, but it's not a hawk.
No, not at all. And it has about the size of a thrush. It's a different shape, but it's about the size of a thrush. It's about 7 inches, something like that.
Okay.
So to hunt, they fly, just open their beak and just keep collecting insects from the air.
It's like a whale.
Yes. So now we got an owl here. That's the black-banded owl. That's not the easiest species to see in the Pantanal, but it's possible, very possible. And it gave me a fantastic definition. It looks like a kid painted it, especially because of this yellow bill. So that's a very, very special owl. One of my favorites with a fantastic call as well. Let's try when we go to our next tour.
I love this bird so much, especially the yellow feet in the beak. And yeah, it does. It looks like something, that a child would draw. It's just, I love it.
Yeah, and this is a typical nocturnal owl. I'm saying that because in the Pantanal, we also have diurnal owls, like this one. This one is called the Ferruginos Pygmy Owl. It's much more active during the day than at night. This is a bird that we used to see quite often. Some of the lodges we stay at have like a pair that it's always around. So it provides great picture opportunities and such a nice bird to watch the behavior. They like to feed on birds, small insects, small vertebrates. So it's a very special owl. And one thing that's very interesting about this owl, whenever forests are quiet, if you imitate the sound of this owl, you can cause a reaction from the other birds. That's a prey for this bird. So generally, whenever birds hear the call of this bird, they start to get very excited because this is a really bad predator for birds. So if the forest is quiet, imitate the sound, we might get a response from other species around.
So this is a pro tip.
Yes. So that's the Ferruginos Pygmy Owl. And there is a bird on this picture here. It's not just a tree bark that I put here by mistake. You can see the bird spurt vertically. It's called the common potu. Potu, they also have the same behavior. They occupy pretty much the same niche of the nightjars and nighthawks, but they belong to a different family. And I don't know any other bird that have such a camouflage like this one. This one was shown to me by a local guide. It's a cowboy from one of the lodges we stay at, and it's quite hard. Even when they point the tree where the bird is, it's quite hard. Just pay attention on this photo here, that even the darker brown colors that are present on the tree bark are present on the bird, and it's amazing how they choose to be on the perfect tree to work as a perfect camouflage. And they really trust in their camouflage. I think this is the most impressive thing. If you find one, sometimes you can almost touch the bird, as they really believe in their camouflage.
It also almost looks like a mammal. I mean, it looked almost like it had whiskers on it. It
Yes,
almost looks like fur. Like, this bird is just so incredible to me. I can't get over, A, like you said, the successful camouflage, but B, it also just, there's something about the shape of it that it's like an in-between bird and mammal animal. Like, it's
yes.
amazing to me.
It's a weird looking creature, definitely. And this picture here was taken in daylight.
Same bird.
On a roosting place. This one was with the beak open because of the heat. That's how some of the bird species use to control their body temperature, is open in the beak and change the hot air to fresh air. And this is also how they hunt at night. They can open their beak even more than that on this picture, and they just fly and catching the insects. And Annie, you mentioned about the whiskers. The whiskers are very useful for this species here, as it's a sensitive thing for them, as they can feel the insects in the air, so they just keep flying loops or turning around and going back to the same area catching insects.
Brilliant.
So definitely that's one of my favorite birds of the Pantanal. So this is the common potu. And as this is a nocturnal bird, this is how they look like at night, with this bright yellow eye open, especially when you put the light on that. And again, here there was an artificial light for us to see the bird, and look where it chose to perch, on a very dark branch, just perch vertically. So for animals that are not carrying light, it's nearly impossible to spot the bird. So it's a very good protection against predators. So, okay, now let's talk about some of the icons of the tropics that also occurs in the Pantanal. This bird here is called the Toco Toucan. This is the world's largest toucan species. We used to see them quite often in our trips to the Pantanal. And I think I never get tired of this bird. It's not the rarest, but it's the beauty of this bird is just amazing.
But I have questions, okay? Because when I see this bird, they're so beautiful, of course, but I have a couple things that I wonder about. You know, the puffin, which is similar colorations, right? Completely different habitat. They don't always have an orange beak. That is part of a breeding thing. It kind of falls off, right? So one, I'm curious, does this ever change color for the beak? That's my first question. My second question is, do they get headaches or neck aches because the beak is so heavy that, like, or do they have special, you know, muscular structure or vertebrae that help deal with this huge, I mean, it looks absolutely huge compared to the animal. And
yes.
Then why grow such a big beak? Like, there's got to be some major advantage to having such a large structure right here.
Okay, so question one, regarding the colors, this is the color they have all year round.
All the time.
Maybe feathers won't be so glossy maybe during the breeding time, but basically it's pretty much the same color in the beak. It doesn't change. Question number two, let me talk about the beak itself.
Yes.
Whenever you see toucans in flight, it's very interesting because it's such a beautiful and elegant bird, but in flight it's not the most elegant bird. They have a very short wingspan. When they fly, it seems that they are desperate to keep flying. Different, like from vultures or hawks, that they have a very elegant way to fly. And the short wingspan Why I'm telling you that? Because you asked me about the beak. They do not have a special muscular structure to support the beak. Actually, the beak, it's pretty light despite its size. It's big size, it's light, it's hollow inside. And the reason of this big beak, I believe this is an insulation system. Birds, they do not sweat. Birds, they do not have sweat glands. So they need to find a way, as like mammals, we sweat, it's a way to control our body temperature. So toucan and the birds, to control their body temperature, they have different strategies. Some of the species, they're gonna open their beak and just change the air. Some of them, they're gonna fly as high as they can in the air. Some small species, they just go really in the water and just bathe themselves. And like toucan, it developed the beak as an insulation system. There are some tunnel systems inside the beak that helps to change the hot air to cooler air.
Wow.
So probably the reason it got so big, the beak got so big, it's a very efficient insulation system. So responding to a question, they do not have a special muscular structure, as this is not so heavy for them. So whenever you see toucan flying, the reason they don't have a beautiful flight is not the beak, it's the short wingspan.
Wow, so you're basically saying it's a gigantic air conditioning system.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
That's incredible. You know, puffins don't fly very gracefully either. They do better in the water than they do flying.
Yes, toucans, whenever they have to fly a long distance, they have to make several stops along the way. They fly from one forest patch to another, rest a little bit, then they keep flying.
Okay.
But they're not the most elegant flyers. And some of the lodges we used to stay at, they used to put some fruit for the birds, and sometimes it attracts the Toco Toucan. And whenever we are lucky to have a close view like this one, you can see all the details. It's a treat for the eyes.
It's so beautiful.
And look at that. This is a different species of toucan. We don't call it toucan, despite the fact it's a toucan. We call it aracari. Aracari is an indigenous word that is also used for the English name. This one is called the chestnut-eared aracari. This is smaller than the Toco Toucan, the one we saw before, and also commonly seen in our tours in the Pantanal. Another one looking for fruits, looking for insects. These birds, including the previous one, they also eat baby birds. They can go to nest and look for chicks, and sometimes bird eggs as well.
I think this is a toucan, I have to say. Aracari, am I saying it right? Aracari?
Aracari, yes.
Aracari. Yeah, I think this one's my favorite toucan, officially.
And again, when they are attracted to some of these feeders, this is the kind of view you can have. It's just stunning to see this. And it's so different from what we generally used to see pictures from toucans. Yeah. And I think whenever we talk about the tropics, toucans, one of the birds that reminds the tropics definitely are the toucans.
Yes.
And here another iconic bird from the tropics. We'll talk now a little bit about the cetaceans. That's the family of the parrots, macaws, parakeets, parrotlets. This is called the golden colored macaw. We have more chance to see a hyacinth macaw than this one. This is like half of the size of a hyacinth macaw, but very special as well. And so this is one of the macaws we can see in the Pantanal.
Now, are these birds endangered, this and the next one, and kind of general in this family, because people are trying to take them to have as pets and that kind of thing?
Well, in the Pantanal, this species specifically, golden colored macaw, it's not endangered, as in the Pantanal, they are well protected and the habitat is well preserved.
Okay.
Outside the Pantanal, this bird occurs in other areas outside the Pantanal. Habitat loss is the main threat for this bird. But changing to the hyacinth macaw again, I couldn't resist, I had to put it again. This one, it used to be critically endangered, And 20 something years ago, a project started in the southern Pantanal and helped to save the species. Nowadays, the species is only endangered, not critically endangered, but it was mainly because of the pet trade. Like a macaw in the black market costs quite lots of money. So this is the main threat for this macaw nowadays. And thanks for this project, it's called the Hyacinth Macaw project, that the population is increasing. I think every year it's increasing slowly, but it's increasing. Just for you to have an idea, like 25 years ago when the project started, there were less than 1,000 individuals in the wild. And now there are more than 5,000 individuals in the wild, which is a lot, especially if you consider that this is a slow reproducing bird. It takes about 7 to 8 years to reach the sexual maturity. Wow. And it will breed every 2 years, laying 2 eggs, and generally, naturally, just the first one will survive because it lays the first one and a few days later lays the second one. So it's a very, very slow rate. And apart from that, for every 100 birds born in the wild, generally 4 or 5 individuals, only 4 or 5 will reach the sexual maturity.
Wow.
So imagine this big step from 1,000 birds to 5,000 birds. It doesn't seem a lot when you think in 25 years, but when you think about the bird ecology, it's a lot. It's a lot. And we have a chance to learn more about this project when we do our tour. And definitely it's one of my favorite conservation programs I've seen in the world. It's amazing.
Wow.
So that's the Hyacinth Macaw, world's largest macaw. And I promise that's going to be the last, not the last one. I'm not going to promise because maybe there will be another one.
Don't keep a promise you can't keep.
This is called the blue-fronted parrot. Fantastic parrot that we can generally have wonderful views of it in the Pantanal. Unfortunately, it's another endangered species. Probably not in the Pantanal. In the Pantanal, it's well protected. The problem of this bird is has the skills to learn how to talk. So several people, they want to have them as a pet because they want to teach them words. They can even say some small phrases. So because of this human vanity, people want to have them as a pet. The population decreased in the past years. Again, in the Pantanal, it's a well-stabilized population.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Yes, that's the blue-fronted parrot. Now we go to parakeets. The next 3 pictures I'll show you, there are 3 different parakeets, and there are 3 different parakeets from 3 different genus, just to show you the huge variety of birds in the Pantanal. This one is called the black-hooded parakeet. Most of its distribution range is the Pantanal. It occurs in a few areas around. This next beautiful one is called the peach-fronted parakeet. Remember in the beginning we talked about the mosaic, that it brings birds and plants from different habitats to the Pantanal. This is a typical species from the savanna areas of Brazil. So that's called the peach-fronted parakeet.
Okay, I have a question about these parakeets.
Sure.
Okay, they all have this very strong beak. It almost looks like they have an overbite, like the top goes over, and it just looks so strong. Why is it that they have this incredibly strong beak?
Well, it is strong. You are absolutely right. Basically, they are nutcrackers. They use the beaks to open nuts from different palm trees, to open some fruits. This is the main reason they have this such a powerful and strong beak. And this is also a very important protection for them, how they protect themselves. I tell you, if a parakeet or a parrot or a macaw bites you, that can cause you, probably not this one, that's pretty small, but if someone try to grab one in the hand, a bite, even from this small one, it's enough for this person to give up.
Wow.
And here, this is an endemic species of the Pantanal, only occurs in the Pantanal. It's called the blaze-winged parakeet. And this is from a 3rd different genus. And again, This genus is typical genus from forested areas, from the rainforests of Brazil. And again, just to explain this mixture of things. This one only occurs in the Pantanal, but the genus is a typical genus from forested areas.
Beautiful.
And I couldn't leave this bird behind. This is gonna be the last bird we're gonna talk about. This is for Brazilians, this is the symbol of the Pantanal. This is called the Jabiru stork. This is world's largest stork. It can reach 10 feet high, which is pretty big.
Wait, 10 feet wingspan.
Sorry, I'm sorry. 5 feet high, I'm sorry. And thank you very much for that. And here's the 10 feet measure, 10 feet of wingspan. So it's an enormous bird, enormous bird. And this is a bird that
high, even that, my daughter, you know, almost 12 years old, is 5 feet tall. Like, that's really big.
Yes, it is really big. It really is. And it's a bird that we used to see quite a lot in the Pantanal. And the best thing about this bird is to see different behaviors. You can see them flying, we can see them fishing. They have a very interesting fishing strategy as they go to shallow water ponds, and they don't make too much effort. The fish are basically trapped there, and they just keep eating as much as they want. And their nests are something very special. Generally, they will choose a very, very tall tree. It can be in a forest area, or just like this one, can be right in the middle of the open. And they make these huge nests. Generally, they keep using the nests until it's possible. They tend to repeat the same nest every year in the same pair. If they have to do some repairs, they just do it. And just pay attention on this picture. I'll show you with my mouse here. The right-hand side of the nest, that's darker brown, it's a nest of monk parakeets. Monk parakeets, they take advantage on the Jabiru stork nest. So they just put a few smaller twigs, sticks, and they take advantage because the roof is done. They just go to the basement, make a few improvements there, and they just start nesting there. I don't think that there is any advantage, any good thing for the Jabiru stork apart from the noise, because parakeets, they can be really noisy, and probably if a predator comes, something comes, they're gonna warn, make a big alarm call. Probably that's the only advantage for the Jabiru stork. Apart from that, he just does all the hard work, and the monk parakeets use the basement.
So they're just noisy neighbors. That's it.
Basically, that's it. Yes, I would love to have monk parakeets around, but not in my basement. Anyway.
No. Now I have a question about this nest. When next picture is fine, you can even show the next picture. So for these birds, when they are making this, it's a big nest to make. You're saying they go back to the same one. Now eagles here in Alaska, they will use one nest 1 year, give it a little break, and then go to the other nest. So they have a couple different ones. We joke about it being a vacation home or something like that. But mostly it would be to have it dry out and be clean, have a year off basically of having young ones and all the food and all of that in it. Do they have two nests like that or just one?
Annie, I think they only have one. I never heard about this different nest for Jabiru stork. It's probably just one.
Okay.
So this is the typical Jabiru stork nest family, actually. And here, this weird looking bird in a close-up shot. This one was collecting water to give to its chicks. So the crop here is full of water. I believe that must be something like 3-4 liters of water. And it's pretty amazing when it goes back to the nest. Just open the beaks like a big rain coming for the chicks. It's pretty amazing to see. Sometimes you can see it.
This looks prehistoric. I mean, the head of this bird with no feathers, this ear is so exposed. It's hard to describe, but it's incredibly unique.
Yes, it is. Wood storks, they have a similar, but definitely this one, it's very. There is a Asian stork species that it's similar. I believe that the fact it doesn't have heads might helps the bird with the body temperature control. That might bring some kind of advantage for it.
Right, right. You told me before that you had a 13-year-old girl on your trip who said
Yes.
this bird looked like it was not finished. Like it was someone started a project and didn't finish it. And I think that's an incredible description.
Absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't have many colors. It's pretty simple, not many details, no feathers in the head. So it's like a prototype.
Yeah. Yeah. So dramatic though, so dramatic.
Yes. And that's the last picture. This is what we used to call, this is the Boeing 747 of the Pantanal. It's pretty amazing when you see them fly, especially if you're lucky to see one flying about eye level. So it's a very special opportunity. And Jabiru storks are spectacular in all different angles, behaviors, and it's a very special bird. So I would like to finish here with the most iconic bird of the Pantanal, the symbol of the Pantanal for us. And as I told you that I couldn't promise, that's the last Hyacinth Macaw pictures. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Shani.
Oh, Fred, I just am so grateful for the education. Your knowledge and awareness of these birds is just absolutely outstanding. I respect all of our naturalists, but man, I love hearing you teach about birds. And everyone knows I'm a mammal lady, so if someone can get me this excited about birds, you're doing something very, very right. Tell us now, I think we are ready for questions, yes?
All right, well, let's get started. We do have some amazing questions for you. We have a lot of questions, so unfortunately we won't have time to get to all of them. But if you do have a question today, you can submit that in your control panel under the questions field. All right, someone made an observation that tropical birds are far more colorful than birds in temperate latitudes. Can you explain why that might be?
I believe that one of the explanations is the food source. Generally, birds from the tropics, they can spend all year round in the same area. They don't need to do lots of migration. And I think somehow the food source, if they have a regular food source throughout the year, it helps them to keep the colors. I'm telling that because, for example, if you get like sandpipers as an example, which is not the most colorful bird, but a good example is how much they change from the breeding season to the non-breeding season. They completely lose their colors. And I believe that's something associated with their food source, because during the breeding season is when they have more food. So I believe that's something very special with that. And definitely in the tropics, all year round, they have more food source for the species.
Interesting. Okay, Hyacinth Macaw. Someone wants to know, how big is it?
Wow, how big in terms of length? From the tip of the tail, it's something nearly 3 feet long. It's pretty big.
Huge.
Oh.
It is huge. It's the world's largest macaw. So.
And how does it get its blue coloring? Is that from pigment or the structure of the feathers?
Structure of the feather. Blue is not a very common color in nature, isn't it? And basically, actually, this macaw, that's crazy. It's black. It's the feather structure only reflects the blue. If you look it from above, from the bottom, if you see it passing over our heads in flight, it's black because you don't have the light hitting it. So it's really black. For example, if you take a feather out throughout the year, it's gonna be, it loses the blue.
That is so interesting.
So it's like the glacier of birds.
We've got a couple questions about toucans. First one, someone's wondering how do the parents feed the chicks, and do the chicks start off with large beaks, or does that grow as they develop?
That's a great question.
No, they grow. Well, actually, when they born, the beaks are red out of proportion, but it's much smaller, and it grows quite fast. Generally, the parents they just collect the food, like many other birds, go to the nest, and then they regurgitate the food for the chicks. But answering your question, the beak, it's a red out of proportion as soon as they born.
So someone wanted a little more information about how the southern screamer bird uses its spur.
Generally, every bird that has spurs on their wings is not only the screamer. There are some much smaller birds with spur on their wings. Generally, they open their wings and they try literally to hit what's trying to attack them with the spur. Literally, just shaking the wings. Generally, they just try to bounce them and try to hit the creature. That's it. I've never seen a screamer using it, but jacana, which is a much smaller bird, has spurs on it. I've seen a jacana using a hawk that tried to attack its chicks, and definitely just kept bouncing the wings and hoping that's gonna hit the predator.
Wow.
So the camouflage birds, the patus, someone is wondering what animals prey on them.
Oh, that's a good question too.
Owls. I read reports about owls preying on patus. You know, it's a bird with a fantastic camouflage. So during daylight, very few animals are going to be able to find it. Probably when they are nesting, actually they nest pretty much in the same place where they perch. They just go to a tip of a branch. This is where they used to nest. They don't build a proper nest. So probably smaller cats, any animal that can climb a tree if are clever enough, but mainly owls, I think, is going to be the main predator for them.
Wow. Are there any hummingbirds in the Pantanal?
Yes, there are a few species of hummingbirds in the Pantanal, but I would say that's not the place. I want to make a hummingbird trip, it's not the Pantanal. We do see a few species, but it's not the bird we see very often in the Pantanal. There are a few, but it's not the hummingbird place. Just like Amazon or the rainforest areas.
Right. So a couple people were curious about the camera gear that you use when you're photographing birds. Can you let us know what you're using?
Sure. I have a Canon. My camera is a Canon, and my lenses, I have a Sigma lens. It's 150 to 500. So this is the one that I use to photograph the birds. This is always because Pantanal is not only about the birds. We are talking about birds today, but sometimes we're so close to the birds in the Pantanal or to the animals that you need something smaller. So a good idea is to have a zoom lens that's like 100 to 400, 100 to 300, something that can give you a little bit of flexibility. I know some people that they went to the Pantanal like with a fixed 500 millimeters lens, and some of the situations they could do close-up shots of the face of the animals. So sometimes if you need to show more the landscape, I highly recommend to have a zoom lens. Something from 100 to 400 works really well in the Pantanal. If you can get bigger than that, even better.
And we have someone requesting binocular recommendation for bird watching.
Well, this is very happy with this question. Binoculars are extremely important for a very rich birding experience. Even with the big birds, if you can get a closer view to them, it's amazing to see the details. And sometimes small birds that it can come close to you, but if you can get a binoculars on them. The two specifications that I recommend for binoculars are 8-42 or 10-42. 8 is how much you're gonna approach the image. The first number is how much you're gonna approach the image. And the second number, the 42, is the angle you're gonna see it. Just for you to have an idea, 50 is the angle that our eyes, human beings, see 50 of angle in their vision. So 842, it's a very good one, or 1042 is also very good, and especially binoculars that it can make a closer focus.
All right, and it is the top of the hour, so I'm gonna just ask just one more question. I'm actually gonna combine a couple. It's pertaining to the trip. Some people are pretty curious about what the season of the trip is, the best time of visit, and in particular, the best time to go to see the most birds.
Well, everything that was shown here, if you do the Nat Hab season, which from June to September, you're gonna be very happy. You're gonna take the definitely the best season of the Pantanal. But basically from June to November, it's very good in the Pantanal. But I would say that from June to September, you're gonna take all. You have very good chance to see all the highlights. Birds starting to breed with nice plumage. Lots of birds very active. So I think this is that's the big season for the Pantanal from June to September.
Wonderful. All right, well, thank you both so much for your time today. I'm gonna call it there with questions and hand it back over to both of you for closing comments, and we'll start with Fred.
Well, Kendall and Annie, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about one of my passions, that are the birds. Thanks again for Nat Hab for everything you've been doing for us since of the beginning of these challenging times. It's been very important for us. Thank you very much. I have no words to express my gratitude, and thank you for all of you that shown up. And I hope that someday some of you will come to Brazil and I'll have opportunity to show these birds personally for you. Thank you very much.
Oh, and thank you, Fred. It is such a joy to learn from you, and I can't imagine how fantastic it would be actually in person to see these animals and to learn from you and our other guides that work in the area. It would just be amazing. Thank you to all of you who tuned in, and don't forget, if you want to learn more about this trip, you can call your adventure specialist. The number is right down there at the bottom of the screen, and they will share tons of information as far as the details about, you know, the accommodations and when your trip is and all of those kinds of things. So remember to give them a call. They're very knowledgeable about the trips. And if you ask them a bird question, they'll just reach out to us and they'll ask Fred. So there you go. Thanks for showing up. Fred, thank you so much for joining me. And Kendall, thank you so much for making all of this happen. Can't wait to see you guys next. Enjoy.
Thanks again, you two. And I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. Be sure to join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can get tomorrow's registration link on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation and we will have the replay available on our website soon. And with that, I'll conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.